Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm Alison Howard. This is Kerri Kupec. And I think it's really neat that you're choosing to spend your Friday evening with us. So kudos to you. As was just said so well by Alyssa, I went to undergrad here. Kerri went to Liberty Law School. And we just wanted to come today just to go to La Coretta, honestly. But mostly to share with you guys the vision of Alliance Defending Freedom and how important it is that we as Christians, people of faith, understand what's going on in the world around us today and how we specifically as young people can get involved. How we got involved, so we're going to share a little bit about our stories, how we got to Liberty and where we are now in Washington, D.C., and then show you some of the work that we do. But we really want this to be a conversation. We'll take questions at the end, but please, if you have questions, as I know they will arise, because these are really hostile topics, they're interesting topics, just raise your hand. We want to have a conversation about the things that you guys care about. So first, I would really think it would be important for Kerri to share her story about her experience at Liberty and with student groups and how she ended up at ADF.
Hi, everyone. So I thought I would start when I was a college student and start from way back then. And the fact that I'm making way back then jokes is probably a bad sign. I'm 33, and I feel very old sitting here among you all. But I wasn't always 33, and when I was 17, I decided I wanted to go to a Christian college, and I went away to a Christian college for a year, and it just wasn't a great year for me for a lot of reasons, and so I decided to transfer back home, live at home, and go to a public university called Queens College, right outside of New York City. It's in Queens. And, I'd had kind of a blah freshman year. It wasn't what I thought. You come out of high school and you're thinking, this is great, I'm going to change the world. I did all of these things in high school. I was on all these sports teams and I led student government. I did this. And then you get to college and sometimes you find yourself as really a small fish in a big pond. And then, and sometimes things just don't go that well and you think, all right, this is not what I thought. And now I'm suddenly disappointed with life at 18. And so, during my sophomore year of college, I just transferred to Queens, and I'll never forget it. I pulled up in front of my house because I was living with my parents, going back to school there, and I remember sitting outside my parents' home and thinking, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm kind of bored. I don't even really know how I feel about God. I just feel kind of apathetic. I just felt lethargic. And I remember sitting there distinctly and praying, God, please give me some fire, please give me some passion, or just give me some direction, and not just about my career and my life, but towards you as well. So the next day, I happened to have Tuesdays off. It was a Tuesday, and I happened to have Tuesdays off during that semester. And I got a call, and it was someone who I was nannying for at the time, and they told me to turn on the TV because I was never going to expect what was about to happen. And I turned on the TV, and there are the planes crashing into the World Trade Center. And I'll never forget it, in part because I had just been to the Trade Center 2 days earlier, and I hadn't been there since I was a child, and I had come home that night, and I said, Mom and Dad, gosh, we haven't been to the World Trade Center in so long. It's a really cool place. I'd parked in there, I'd walked around. I said, we got to go back really soon. So you can imagine how I felt, especially since having just been there and watched that unfold before my eyes. I went back to school a couple of days later, and our school was literally right across the water from the Trade Center. And so we just watched. We watched the smoke. We watched the Staten Island ferry cruise by, looking to actually pick up bodies. And they never actually were even able to get them because of the fire and how that was going. And at that time, someone had said, you should check out Campus Crusade, which is now Cru. Check out Cru. It's a really good student group. So I got involved very quickly there and kind of immediately got thrown in because we were literally under the shadow of a tragedy unfolding right before us. We set up a table and we had, Cru did these really very artfully done brochures, where is God in times of suffering? What's happening? We had these survival kits. We did prayer stations. As you could literally smell the disintegration of the buildings, the smoke. Our campus was covered in this feel of this whole thing. So it was interesting. So I just prayed the day before. What am I doing? And boom, tragedy hits. I'm involved immediately, and I tell you that story because we're going to talk a little bit later about public universities and what's going on right there now, especially with respect to Christian clubs. And I can't imagine what it would have been like, not just for me, but for other students at Queens College if Cru had not been there to link arms with everyone around us and share in the pain and suffering and do what we could do and say, we don't have the answers, but we're here to serve you in however way that we can. So that's how I started my time at Queens College, as my career as a college student, because I just transferred in. I was thinking about being a speech pathologist. Now, I have two people here in the audience who are amazing and from Liberty University's School of Law. In fact, Dean Tamala is sitting there, and he was one of my professors as a 1L. And I'm skipping ahead of the story, but I'm pointing them out because they will tell you that I, not as much now, probably had one of the most thick New York accents in Long Island that you can have. So I decided I'm going to be a speech pathologist. Here's why. It's not a lot of work. This is what I was thinking. I said, I'm tired of writing papers. Papers stress me out because I care too much. I care too much about government and political issues, and you know what? Emotionally, I just cannot invest myself in this anymore. I'm going to go to speech pathology because then I'll have a nice little job. I can help people talk. And it's not going to be a big deal. Clearly having no clue what speech pathology entailed, by the way. And so I took a speech pathology class, and I can't believe I'm sharing this right now, and I failed. I failed the class. It was the first time I'd ever gotten an F in a class in my life. Speech 101, I failed. And I remember thinking, I don't care how you say the word the. It's sitting there. Clearly, this was not a career, a dream for me. And I remember talking to one of my professors and telling him I was going to be in speech pathology. And he said, Kerri, you realize that's kind of a vocation and a calling, right? Oh, is it? He said, maybe you should consider philosophy or political science. And, all right. I said, but the reality is I was running away from it. So anyway, I always say, even though I was devastated by that F, I mean, I was depressed for a few weeks. And of course, I told everyone that I met that I had failed the class. Why am I telling people that? But I was. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me, though, because it was sort of a wake-up call. I knew what I needed to do. I go into political science and government because it's what I'd always loved, what I wanted to do. And so I went into it. Well, I was the only conservative and the only Christian in my political science program for my entire career at Queens College. And it was interesting, very interesting. And as you can imagine, the hot topics that come up in poli-sci, but then it wasn't so much, say, marriage. It was abortion, and abortion still is a hot topic, but we're talking about partial birth abortion. People were still grappling with that. And thank God we're not as much anymore. Most people realize what a horrific procedure that is. But it was scary. It was hard to be the only person to stand up and say, hey, I don't think abortion is a good thing. What? And the reaction that I would get would be rough. And I would pray. So I started praying before every class. God, please give me boldness. Please help me speak what I'm supposed to speak. Help me be winsome about it. And I'll never forget, I had a classmate of mine come up to me once after class and say, I was the first female he had ever heard in his life take a pro-life position. And so I thought, okay, maybe I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And so I started praying before each semester and asked God just to lead me to which classes that I should take. To take the classes where I could be the best witness for him, knowing that I wasn't going to be the expert, but do my best to prepare and do my best to represent him. And so it was interesting. And through this all, I was still very involved in Crew. I started working for Crew. I started running a rally, a college student rally in Queens. That was fun. I did that for 2 years. And then I also was really feeling drawn to law. As I'm sure some of you here, pre-law, you're thinking about law school. And so I really started thinking about that. And by the end of my college career, I had decided I was going to either go on staff with Campus Crusade and do college ministry because I love it. I loved it. I still love it. Or go to law school. And then I got sick. I had a freak accident thing happen. I ended up in the hospital right during the time when all of law school applications were due. I had taken the LSAT. I was severely sick. In fact, I actually almost died. And I missed all the applications. It took 2 months to recover. And I was devastated. I thought, God, I really, really thought I was supposed to go to law school. In fact, I was pretty sure about it. This is not what I thought, so I guess I'll go on staff with Crew, which was still a good option, but in my heart, I didn't feel it was the right move. But I thought, well, it's too late. I'm not going to law school. Well, as I'm home recovering, I'll never forget it, I got a letter in the mail that said, hi, we're Liberty University. We're starting a brand new law school. It's going to focus on constitutional law. And if you have a certain LSAT and GPA, we're going to give you a full ride because we're trying to get the school accredited, and it's part of our ways to help get the school off the ground. And I can remember like it was yesterday when I opened that letter. Because you see, I had wanted to go to a law school that focused on constitutional law. There are no schools in New York that focus on that other than Columbia and NYU. Those are very tough schools to get into, and it's also an incredible amount of money. And I remember saying to the Lord at the time, God, I really believe that you want me to go into full-time ministry, but if I go to law school, I'm going to take on all this debt, and I don't know how I'm going to pay that off if I'm going to full-time ministry. And I just felt very peaceful that I was still supposed to go. So I thought, okay, but again, everything happened, didn't apply. I got this letter, and I knew instantly, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to go. I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know this was happening. It was as if someone had written a letter and described everything I had been looking for. And so I called up the school, and within a month, I'll never forget it, a voicemail, my parents' answering machine. That's when we use those things still. And I had graduated college that morning. We got home, and there was a message from Liberty University School of Law saying, hi, Kerri, you've been accepted. We're giving you this full ride. Congratulations. So it was really, really cool to see God work that way. And so I ended up taking a 4-year break between my first and second year of law school for other reasons. But it was really an excellent time. I ended up doing some youth ministry. I worked at a university. I graduated from law school in 2011. And I clerked for a judge for a couple of years in Lynchburg, right here, Judge Petty, which was a great experience. And now I'm at Alliance Defending Freedom. And what I tell everyone, and this is the truth, it is truly the best thing that has ever happened to me. I get to take my knowledge of law and government and politics and mix it with media and the court of public opinion. So it's always fun. It never stops. You don't get a lot of sleep, but I'm very grateful for it.
That's awesome. As Kerri pointed out, I think you guys will find as soon as you graduate that Liberty has impacted you more than you thought. And it might be even just a day, a week, the whole time. But I know that my pivotal moment here at Liberty was being a part of student government, which, is anyone part of student government here? Okay. And we decided to have a pro-life week. So we invited Norma McCorvey down. Let me test you. Do you know who Norma McCorvey is? Raise your hand if you know who Norma McCorvey is. Oh, wonderful. Okay, how many know about Roe v. Wade? It's a little easier. Okay, so Norma McCorvey is Jane Roe in Roe v. Wade. And she's a woman now that's a believer that is working to overturn Roe v. Wade. But you know that Supreme Court case legalized abortion in our country, and because of that, close to 60 million children have been lost since 1973. 1973? Law people, right? Yeah, okay. So we invited her down, and it was a wonderful time to hear her speak. We decided we were going to have roses and present a rose on stage in convocation for every child that was lost in our generation. We also decided to put T-shirts on every student in convo, black T-shirts to represent children that were lost in our generation, white to represent those that made it. And it was just this beautiful visual to show the significance and impact. And I want to be careful because in a room of this size, guys, we know that either you guys or our families, our friends, my own family and friends, as you'll hear in a second, have experienced abortion. But I, at that time, as a senior at Liberty, did not know anyone that I could say. Well, we did this great week. Norma McCorvey shared her story, and it's a really interesting story. You should look it up if you have time. But I went home that Christmas break, and I sat down with my dad, who's my best friend, and he said, you know, Al, I need to tell you something. I never thought it would matter, but since you've been doing all this pro-life work, I really feel convicted, and I had to confess to the Lord, and I confessed to your mom, and I need to confess to you and ask for forgiveness that I assisted a girl in getting an abortion, my girlfriend, when I was 20 before I got saved. And with tears in his eyes and me just being floored, he said some words I will never forget. He said, they told us nothing was there. They told us it was a clump of cells. So when you hear that, that was what was actually told to us, he and his girlfriend at the time. And my dad, out of courage, called her, found that girl, and apologized to her. She's married now and has kids, thank the Lord, but she said, okay. She got off the phone with him. But he needed to feel as though he could clear his conscience. And in that moment, I realized this is not just a women's issue that we hear about in the news all the time. This affects as many men as it does women, and it's close to home. But the beauty is that there's healing and redemption on our side of this life issue. And so I didn't know that that would be such a monumental moment for me, but I then chose to go to DC through the Washington Intern Student Program here at Liberty, and I interned at Fox News, as well as at Concerned Women for America, whose CEO is also a Liberty alum, and ended up working full-time for Concerned Women for America, and got to do some really neat things, which we'll talk about in our time today. But the Lord has you on a trajectory that you don't probably know. You don't know what it is yet. We're still on ours. But I just want to encourage you to continue to be steadfast in the things that the Lord's putting in front of you right now. I know finals week is coming up in like the first week of May, and that there's a plan for you. So if we can come back and tell you that, just to continue on and be strong, the Lord has you here for a reason. He had us here for a reason. Now we get to work for Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a nonprofit legal organization that defends the rights of people to freely live out their faith, whether it's the ability of a student campus club to have a prayer table and offer assistance when people are asking, where is God right now after 9/11, or whether it's the ability of a student to have pro-life speakers come down to campus. You guys are at Liberty. We can do that here. It's not so easy at other schools. So we're going to show you a little video now about a little bit more about Alliance Defending Freedom and what we do.
So I always tell people that one of the best parts of my job, the best part of my job, is our clients. I and Allison and everyone at ADF, we're so privileged to work with truly some of the most incredible people you will ever meet in your life. I often say, where do these people come from? They're too good to be true. And these are people who are really, they're standing for truth, and they're living out their faith no matter what the cost, even if that's going to cost them everything. And right now we're defending, you may have heard of her, Barronelle Stutzman. She's a 72-year-old grandmother in Washington State. Just think about your grandmother, and as I tell this story, she has been a floral designer for 40 years. She took over her shop, Arlene's Flowers, from her mother who had Alzheimer's. And Barronelle has lovingly served her community and employed people, all different kinds of people for her entire career, including one gentleman named Rob. Well, Rob identifies as gay, and that was no problem. Barronelle and Rob had a great relationship. In fact, he was her friend and customer for 10 years. Well, the state of Washington passed same-sex marriage as the law of the state, and this is before the federal Supreme Court decision that came down last June. So same-sex marriage was now legal in Washington, and Rob came to Barronelle and asked her to create custom floral design for his same-sex wedding ceremony. And Barronelle thought about it and prayed about it. And it's important that you know this, and remember these kinds of things. It's hard when you have personal relationships with people to take these kinds of stances, right? It's easy for us to sit kind of afar, sit in a classroom and talk about this stuff, but when you're sitting and it's your friend or your parent or your sibling, it gets a lot harder. So it wasn't just that Barronelle said, nope, sorry, Rob, it was this is tough. She went home, she prayed about it, she went back to Rob and said, Rob, and as she always describes it, she said she put her hands on his and said, because of my faith in Jesus Christ, I can't create custom work to celebrate your ceremony. However, here are the names of 3 floral designers in the area who I know will do a great job. And she says that was because, as she said, she wanted him to have something special because she really cares. They talked about his wedding. In fact, they talked about whether his mom would walk him down the aisle. So they talked about the details. And they went on, and he went out the door, and that was fine. Well, the next thing you know, through a series of events, the state attorney general in Washington was after Barronelle and decided to make an example of her. Rob's partner had put some stuff on social media, and before you know it, Barronelle had been slapped with a lawsuit, both by the state and by Rob and his partner. And that's where we are now, and we're actually waiting to see if when the Washington Supreme Court will hear her case. But what's interesting about Barronelle's story, and what's disturbing about Barronelle's story, is that the Attorney General has taken literally unprecedented action against her. It's not that she's going to just lose her business. They're suing her personally, which means that everything's on the line. That means her home, that means her retirement, that means her life savings, If you can believe this, it even means potentially her dog. As ridiculous as that sounds, it's actually true. And because Washington State is a community property state, anything in her husband's name is up for grabs as well. So they're about to lose everything. And this is someone who's employed someone who identified as LGBT. This is a longtime friend and customer, all because she, as an artist, declined to create one custom arrangement for one same-sex wedding ceremony. And one thing that we like to say at ADF when we talk about these issues, regardless of where you stand on the issue of marriage, every American should be concerned about a government with that kind of power that could force someone to speak a message, to promote a message which violates the very essence of who they are, and punish them severely if they don't. And so now we're going to show a little video. Do you want to add anything to Marinelle's story?
Yeah, as we're getting the video ready, I would just say if you could comment on how much the fines that are actually added on to people that decline to do these sorts of services are also something that we're taking into account in other cases. But just so you guys know, this works like if Baronelle makes a phone call. So how do we get in touch with Baronelle? How did Baronelle get connected to ADF? Might be a cool question.
Yeah, that's a great question. She's been working with some attorneys in Washington State for a long time. We have a network of allied attorneys that are spread out throughout the country. We 100% can't do the work that we do alone, so we depend on the generosity of a lot of attorneys who do their work for us pro bono. They do the services for free. We represent all of our clients for free. And so we are very thankful for ministry friends and partners who fund our organization, and we are also extremely thankful for, I believe we have about 25 or 2,600 volunteer attorneys across the country who help as well, and that's where that started. Yeah. She's awesome. I was just with her last weekend. CBS Sunday Morning actually is taping an interview with her on Monday, and that's going to air on April 24th, Sunday morning. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We spent a lot of time with her. She's been on the Kelly File on Fox, and she's a wonderful human being.
She's really sweet. Kerri said it so well. These people are heroes. If you guys remember Hobby Lobby, if you raise your hand, Hobby Lobby. Okay. So a part of Hobby Lobby was a group called Conestoga Wood, which was a Mennonite family of woodworkers when the Obama administration forced all employee insurance plans to have abortifacients, abortion-inducing drugs in it. Just to give you an example, this Mennonite family is they're known pacifists, okay? They don't want to fight anyone, but yet they're willing to fight the federal government on this because it matters that much to them. So that to me has always stood out to me as just, these are not people looking for a fight. You can tell by Baronelle's demeanor and her tone and her business, she just wants to love on people. That's really what she does, is she creates floral arrangements for anniversaries and birthdays, and she did that for Rob and his partner. She truly loves people. And it's in times like these where I think we realize what that looks like, what love and truth looks like, but also I think we're having really good conversations about what respecting each other's beliefs are and what that looks like, and respecting each other's feelings on these things. So Baronelle's a wonderful example of just grace and truth, and to make clear. So Kerri's an attorney, and she partners with attorneys to not only win in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion. So maybe, do you want to talk about a little bit what that looks like inside and outside the court during these kind of cases?
Sure, so it entails a lot of things. The court of public opinion is crazy. It's insane, and it's a lot of fun. It's very challenging. We focus on a number of different areas. We work on university free speech cases. We work on freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. We work on the sanctity of life. You may have seen we do a lot of litigation involving Planned Parenthood and abortion. But I have to be honest with you, the way our culture has gone, these cases, our conscience clients, as we call them, they're challenging. Those who oppose people like Baronelle are driving a narrative in our culture and media right now that to agree with someone to say that, yeah, the government should not force any American to promote or speak a message which violates who they are. Suddenly, they're a bigot. Suddenly, they dislike people. And that's not at all what this is. And so it's a challenge to continue to drive that narrative. But I'll tell you this. One thing that's been interesting this last year that I've seen, especially after the Obergefell, the same-sex marriage decision came down at the Supreme Court, we're seeing some changes in people on this particular issue. I think they're realizing how extreme the ramifications actually are, how extreme it is for someone like Baronelle Stutzman to lose everything that she possesses for declining to participate in one religious ceremony that violates her religion. And just a case in point on that, this past Sunday we put one of our senior VPs on This Week with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. And I was there with her, and it was interesting. We said the night before, we said, Kristen, we're working with her, you know, there's a lot of prep that goes into interviews, a lot of brainstorming and roundtable discussions. And we talked about we really need to keep driving home this message that this is a very narrow set of circumstances that we're talking about. We're talking about creative professionals being forced by the government to create custom work against their faith and conscience. And I said, you know, Kristen, we got to make sure that creative professional phrase is in that interview. Well, she says, she gets the first line, so to speak, and she says creative professionals. Well, George Stephanopoulos jumps on that immediately and says, yeah, about those creative professionals. And he asks the person who's opposing her, who identifies as gay, and he's a professor, a very, you know, highly intelligent man, and says, you know, Mr. Corvino, do you think that creative professionals should be forced to create work for marriage ceremonies? Okay, so if you're hearing that, you're like, all right, that's what it is. Let me tell you something, that's a shift. A year ago, we were not even hearing that. We were not even hearing that question on mainstream media asked. So it's encouraging. There's a lot of commentary written, even by those who identify as LGBT, who say, look, I'm in favor of same-sex marriage, but this is too much. This is not what we thought it was going to be. This is not what we're talking about. So it's interesting. So it takes on a lot of forms, as you can imagine, my job. It's everything from preparing talking points and prepping others and interviews and building relationships with reporters and media and think tanks, and it's just, it's a lot, and we could talk about that more, but we wanted to ask if you have any questions about the Washington State florist, anything at all about the law, about her story. We wanted to stop here and take any questions. Yes?
Do we feel pretty good about our chances if the Supreme Court takes the case?
Well, we have to see first what's going to happen with the Washington Supreme Court, right? And so it's hard to say what they'll do. At that point, we would be filing an appeal to the United States Supreme Court. I have to be honest with you, these cases have not gone well through the states. They haven't. We have one victory thus far in Kentucky with a t-shirt printer. He creates custom t-shirts, and it's a little bit different, but what happened there was his name's Blaine Adamson, and a customer came in and said, can you create t-shirts to promote it was like the local gay organization. They were doing a gay pride festival and parade, and he's a Christian t-shirt printer, and he declines orders all the time for different reasons, and his hands-on original logo's on there, so it's very clear, and I think, and there's some reference, I think, to a Bible verse, or it's clear, I think it even says Christian t-shirt outfitters, and he declined and referred. He referred. And it went to trial. It went not to trial. It went to the lower court there in Kentucky, and the judge ruled in his favor and said, look, we can't force an individual to literally print a message which he disagrees with. That's not good. So that's a win, and that's a good thing. As far as Barronelle goes, she's lost, you know, throughout. So we'll see what happens there. We have a cake designer in Colorado named Jack Phillips. He's lost. Really quick, just want to talk about him for a second. Really awesome man. Promise you I'm not just saying this because I work for Alliance Defending Freedom. They really are. They're amazing human beings. Very devout Christian. Keeps his store closed on Sundays, like Chick-fil-A, like the food you're eating right now. Won't produce and create custom work for Halloween, for bachelorette parties, bachelor parties. Declined to do one order for one same-sex ceremony. He's getting hit with the same kind of lawsuit that Barronelle is. But here's what's interesting about Jack's story. In the same area of Colorado, a man went into other bakeries in that area and said, please create and design a cake that promotes traditional marriage. And it was evident that it was, you know, anti-same-sex marriage, but pro, you know, one-man, one-woman marriage. And the cake artist refused to do so. And they literally said, we'll give you the cake, but we will give you the icing to write that message because we don't agree. So this gentleman went to the local, they're called human rights commissions. It's a little bit of a joke. They're anything but that. But anyway, he went to the Human Rights Commission, filed a complaint, just like the gentleman had filed a complaint against Jack. It's the same fact pattern, right? It's the same story. That same Human Rights Commission said, no, those cake artists they can decline, but Jack can't. Not only that, the commission compared Jack, and it's in the transcript, it's in the record, they compared him to Nazis and slave owners for what he had done. It's horrible. Like, it's really horrible. And it's just disturbing. Again, I can't emphasize enough. It almost doesn't matter where you stand on the issue of marriage. The fact that this is the culture that we live in, that a government can force people against their will to participate like this and severely punish and threaten them if they don't, it's not good.
Okay, a couple things. One, when she refused to serve the homosexual couple, but yet she did refer him to other floors, does not make sense why she'd get sued for that. Also, I thought all businesses had the right to refuse service to anyone. I don't see any point in suing a business if they're refusing service, especially if they refer you to another business that will do what you want.
So there's a couple answers to that. And this gets into some of the technical aspects of the case. Oftentimes, our clients are sued under these things, we call them SOGIs, or sexual orientation, gender identity laws. They're local laws that basically say you can't, quote unquote, discriminate on the basis of sexual identity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. But the problem is our clients are not discriminating. They're not saying, oh, you're gay, therefore we can't serve you. Not at all. In fact, like I said, there's a record with all these clients. They serve everyone who comes in their doors. They're saying, as an artist, I can't put my heart, mind, and soul into creating custom work that promotes and celebrates a ceremony which violates my faith. And that's a big First Amendment issue. We're talking a freedom of speech issue. It's a speech issue. I mean, even when you think about the words on a cake, it's literal speech, right? And there's also some Supreme Court laws, cases that back that up as well. We're talking about free exercise, the free exercise of religion. This is a religious freedom issue. So there are major constitutional principles at stake in these cases.
And I think, too, that's neat to think about when Kerri talks about creative professionals. You guys are all going to be creative professionals. You understand that? No matter what you're studying, you're creating. That's what God's given us to do in this earth, right? Is just to go forth and to use the skills He's given us to contribute to our communities. So whether it's law or communications or art or music, you're creating. So you should, and I think you do because you're here, have a deep interest in what's going on right now with creative professionals and their ability to live their faith out in their work. So maybe one more question and then we'll continue on to one other cool client.
No, it's completely unprecedented, and it's completely unprecedented for the entire country. It's the first we've ever seen that. So the personal liability it's bad.
I will tell you another good win is the fact that Kerri was able to solidify CBS Sunday media interview for Barronelle Stutzman. Any of you guys in media will know that the Sunday shows are really pivotal because that's what everyone watches before they get into work, and it's very hard to get on. So that is a win. The fact that people are seeing these stories, that we're highlighting our clients so well and explaining their stories that make sense so that they want to have them on and share the story with the nation. So that's a good thing.
And of course, we don't know. It's taped. We don't know what they'll use and what they won't use. So it'll be interesting to see on April 24th how this interview actually goes. But we're hopeful. We want to introduce Barronelle to the country. It's the first time in ADF history that a client like Barronelle, or any client for that matter, will be on with an ADF attorney on a Sunday morning show. So we'll see.
The next video I want to show you guys is a guy named Chief Kelvin Cochran. He's wonderful, and I think you'll love his story. So we'll take questions after this.
Chief Cochran is the man, and I say that because if you met him, if he was in here right now, you would think, why isn't this guy running for president? He just has just an incredibly interesting presence. Really, really cool guy. Dynamic, powerful, really gentle spirit, awesome. Clearly a rock star firefighter, as we can say. I mean, the fact that the guy was appointed by President Obama as U.S. Fire Administrator for the United States, which is the highest position one can hold as a member of the fire service here, went on to win Firefighter of the Year. In fact, he's so good, and I don't even know how this works, he actually lowered fire insurance rates for the entire city of Atlanta. I don't know how that happens, but that's how good he is. So the fact that he was fired, and you saw why, for a men's devotional book that essentially just cut and paste from the Bible about God's plan for marriage on in a couple paragraphs in 160 pages is just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you guys think about your mom and dad working and the things that they do on the side. Bible studies, mentoring, counseling. And you think about Chief Cochran was the best in his field. I love his story. He talks about, in another interview, about how he was so poor that his mom had made mayonnaise sandwiches because that's all that they could have. And you know, he grew up without a dad. He is literally a success story, right? Like any university board would be like, he did it. Look at him go. But instead, and the Obama administration did, they said, come be our federal fire chief. But the fact that he wrote in a book about, for men, a men's devotional book, to help his guys in his unit understand the beauty of marriage, where shame comes from, the guilt. And it's so funny because it's titled, Who Told You You Were Naked? And he's from Atlanta, so he says, naked. Who told you you were naked? And he shares this story. This is his heart. This is just his life. And so for him to be persecuted because of that, to lose his job, to lose everything, it's not only just saddening, but like Kerri said, this is a man of character and integrity. And he's something that we should all strive after. So
one other thing I'd like to add is because he's from Shreveport, Louisiana, and he's African American, obviously, and so he faced serious discrimination for being African American when he was first working for the fire service there. So because of what he faced, he actually developed a passion for anti-discrimination, for anti-discrimination policies. And so what he did was he said to himself, if I ever become in a position of authority, I am going to create new policies so that everybody who works for me and everybody who works in our unit will feel comfortable. So he has all these really kind of cool names for them and stuff. So that's also what he was known for. So this is why it's particularly ironic. He implemented these policies. It was really kind of ahead of the curve in that sense. And so it's ironic that someone who suffered this is now the target of religious discrimination.
And Mayor Kasim Reed actually filed an investigation into his whole background to see if he had ever discriminated. And this is like my favorite part of the story because that investigation found that Chief Cochran, in all of his hiring, his firing practices, all of his work, his conversations, has never discriminated against anyone for their race or their sex, for their class, their status, and that's awesome. That is so cool. That's living above reproach, guys, because you never know when something's going to happen, but he lives above reproach, and he gets to stand on that, so that's been really cool. I want to open up the floor again for questions. I know we're focusing right now on the marriage issue. I'm going to turn the page onto the life issue in a second, but on this marriage issue, whether it's Chief Cochran or Barronell, with religious liberty, do you guys have any questions? This is a safe space, so go ahead, Sean.
What kind of support or lack of support do you find at Alliance Defending Freedom from churches and pastors, especially after the Obergefell decision? Are there a lot of people in the like mainstream Protestant or Catholic church that are saying, just stop fighting it and just let it go? Or is the opposite true?
Go ahead if you want.
Yeah, I'll start off. Well, it's a good question, and we actually have a church team specifically focused on fostering those relationships with pastors so that they have the answers to these hard questions and that they have someone to call to say, what's going on in my state? But you guys see that. You guys see some pastors changing their mind and being wishy-washy on that issue. The job, I think, of us at ADF and you guys and our allied groups that we work with is to just make this case, to share these stories. So I don't think that, I think Kerri can talk to pastors at the pulpit preaching and what they can and can't say, but a lot of this is just biblical stuff. So ADF is definitely making sure that pastors as individuals are able to talk about this. I mean, you can share these stories. These are just stories of people that have faced this kind of termination.
We've definitely received support, and one quick thing I'll say is that there's obviously some concern about the future of their freedom to be able to operate their church and their parishes consistent with biblical truth and teaching. So we designed a manual, our team it's called Protecting Your Ministry. It's downloadable. I mentioned that. It's been very popular, and it's actually a step-by-step legal checklist and guide that a pastor or someone who heads up a ministry can walk through to make sure that they are prepared for what we see to be the coming storm. Chief Cochran's? Okay, so this is a little bit of a different one for us. So this is an employment case. It's an employment, and so we're suing the city for unlawful termination, for termination for his beliefs, and the city obviously is trying to get that tossed out. As you can imagine, there's no case here. Well, the good news is the judge recently said, no, there is a case here. So we're going to go on to trial. But there's a lot of procedural hearings that happen before that. But ultimately, that's where we'll probably end up. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how this one proceeds.
Okay. It's a great question. Well, living and breathing it every day, it can be hard, right? It's hard, the issues we deal with. But the best, I think, example is, and we just always remind each other, is blessed are the peacemakers. We're just trying to pursue peace. That's it. That's what Jesus did. Jesus canceled and wiped out all anger and came to effectually give us our salvation, right? So this is about people living peacefully according to their convictions without fear of punishment by the government. So there should be no, I don't think that helps. I mean, you can be righteously angry at injustice. That's okay. But there's no need for hatred here. That doesn't lead to good things. What helps here is to get fired up, to get really good at what you're doing, to get involved, to speak out, to find people around you like you guys are doing, to gather together as Christians, as a body of Christ, and work together. These videos, we'll talk about this in a second, but think about this, guys. This is a fire chief, okay? He needs attorneys. Then he comes and there's a media team that comes alongside, and we write op-eds and blogs, and we go on social media and we create videos. There's a digital media guy that does all of this. There's an audio technician. There's so many parts of the body of Christ working together. So you should never take it all on yourself. We're part of a bigger thing here, which is really great. But I think what you're getting at is it can just be very frustrating. But guys, stuff has been going on for a long time. Christians have been persecuted for a long time. This is just the generation that we live in, so we just have to do our best in this generation.
Any more questions?
How long does a case like this typically take?
That's a great question.
Well, it really depends. I know any lawyers in here will understand that. So for instance, the person who's representing Baronil Stutzman, the florist, she has been litigating a case out of Washington State involving conscience rights for pharmacies and pharmacists for over 10 years. It just depends. It depends on a lot of different factors. It could go quickly, but typically you're looking at a couple years to actually Bronx Household of Faith, when you saw that little thing in the video about public schools and people being able to worship in public schools, I believe that case went on for 19 years. So it depends. You got to be in it for the long haul. That's the moral of the story.
Are there any avenues for students to get involved aside from prayer?
We're going to talk about some unique ADF ways to get involved, to get training. But yeah, absolutely. I think in your communities, there's ways to get involved. On campus, there's ways to get involved. But again, when you find out about this stuff, like going to websites and seeing like, sometimes we're doing different social media stuff, like tweeting at the mayor for the day, calling your representative and letting them know how you feel about these things. Or also really sweet things have come. We have gotten letters from students that just say, Chief Cochran, I think you're a hero. Thanks for standing up. And, you know, those sorts of things can be really encouraging. It's really hard, as Kerri mentioned, on our clients, as it would be on you guys or your mom and dad or your grandma, to be thrown into an environment of hostility when you just want to live peacefully. So yeah, absolutely.
These are not people who are looking to be on TV. I can tell you that, which makes them that much more, I think, appealing. One little thing I'll add to that is you would be surprised how impactful you can be in a conversation with a friend. And it's not just, just be bold in your personal conversations. I'm serious. I cannot tell you. One thing I've learned at ADF, the amount that happens at the local level, I mean local level, like the city council, cities, you'd be surprised what happens in towns and counties where across the country, where a lot of this is really getting fought out right now. Because to be quite honest with you, by the time it reaches the statewide level or the federal level, it's really tough to undo. So we're going to show a video in a minute which shows the power of the people, so to speak, within their local community. But I would just encourage you to continue to look for ways to be bold and winsome in your own conversations, because I'm a big believer in boldness inspires other boldness. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You know, I work with a lot of people on the Hill and Capitol Hill. You know, members of Congress have a hard time talking about things too. They do. But sometimes it just takes one leader and one person to say, no, this isn't right, and here's why. And we love people and we're compassionate, but this isn't good. And with one person doing that, it really does set off a domino effect. People see that on TV. People see that in their jobs. People see that among their friendships, and they suddenly think, okay, I can talk like this too. I can do this too. And then before you know it, it sort of sets off a whole firestorm. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, and sharing the truth. You might assume everyone knows what you know, but just speaking one anecdote, like, did you know that Chief Cochran's no bigot? He was hired by the Obama administration, applauded for his work, they begged him to come back. You know, those sorts of things. Just those little truths, that's why we're sharing these videos, not just because they're fun and well done, but just it's truth. It's sharing it with you guys. You might not hear this. I mean, Kerri's been on the phone with me before. I've been in a conversation with reporters who don't know what they're about to talk about. So that you have to tell them, like, oh, Barronell served him for 19 years. Tell me more about that. That means they didn't know that until you told them. So we're going to show the next video answers kind of Sean's questions about pastors. Sorry, I'll grab your question right after.
Do you want to answer? We can take that first. That's
Okay,
fine.
yeah, good.
I just had a question about, I know that he got fired from his job, and him and other people that could get fired from their jobs, is there like a facet that would help them or is helping him about how to maintain his finances until he can find a new one?
Do you mean, is there something?
Like a GoFundMe account or something? Like a way to help him that way?
Or like, is there an area in like what you guys do that like helps him find another job, or is that kind of up to him?
It depends on the client. So obviously the creative professionals, they're still doing their jobs. They're just not doing weddings. So they've stopped doing weddings. Chief Cochran is actually now working at his church. But don't forget, the purpose of the lawsuit is to get back his job. So, yeah. So that's just a great example of the, I said to Allison earlier, the explosion between law, policy, and media. But look, that was a fascinating situation. Obviously, you just got the rundown, so I won't go over it again. But what was interesting about it was that is an example of something that was successfully litigated in the court of public opinion. The mayor withdrew those subpoenas, which was an incredibly disturbing encroachment upon these pastors' rights to speak freely and exercise their faith as pastors, without us ever having to step foot into a courtroom, basically, other than the motion, other than the request that we filed to the court to say, hey, these subpoenas are not good, these are not going to fly. She withdrew it on her own because of the incredible amount of public pressure, and you saw the things that went into it. And obviously, we have a big team at ADF, and a lot of things went into it. But that is a really good example of at least what I do as merging both my background as an attorney with media and public communication.
Mm-hmm. And also for pastors to have an outlet too when they feel like something's going on. So to represent them for free was really neat. I want to switch gears if I can now. You know, we talked a lot about religious liberty, a lot about marriage. Super important. Our third area of focus is the sanctity of life. And it's something that ADF gets to work on specifically, well, I shouldn't say specifically, in a lot of different ways. But this past year, it's been a lot of defunding Planned Parenthood of the $1.5 million in taxpayer funds they get every day. So a lot of the work that I do, I'm the Director of Alliance Relations at ADF. Before this, I was at Concerned Women for America, I mentioned, which, by the way, their president and CEO will be speaking at Senior Convo on Monday. So are you guys, any of you seniors? Okay, so you have to be there now because I see you. So come, and we'll share some more stories about that. But working on the life issue specifically, we involve Planned Parenthood because Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest abortion provider. You guys know, as well as I do, that there's been a lot of misinformation about what they do. And so this year at Alliance Defending Freedom, we've partnered with a lot of our allied groups. We have allied attorneys that we talked about that get training. But our allied groups, we work together. That's something that I love about Alliance Defending Freedom. And it's really a good precedent-setting thing that Ronald Reagan said, we can get more done together than we ever could separately, as long as we don't care who gets the credit. So we've partnered to work to make sure that women and men know that there's alternatives to Planned Parenthood. So there's over 13,000 federally qualified health centers across the country. Can anyone guess how many Planned Parenthoods there are? I think Sean already knows. Okay, let's go ahead.
Is it 500?
There's 665 Planned Parenthoods compared to 13,000 community health centers. Now, Alliance Defending Freedom, it's really neat, guys, if you go and Google Planned Parenthood on our page, to see some of the stuff that we've done to go inside and find out what Planned Parenthood's doing wrong. Abortion happens there, we know that. But also the fact that Planned Parenthood is failing to report sexual abuse and rape is a huge deal. I know our generation cares about sex trafficking. We care about the rights of young women. And we know what happens when people don't speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. So Planned Parenthood's been documented, not failing to report that sexual abuse. You have moms that say, what? My little girl was being abused by a soccer coach for 3 years, and no one ever called me or told me because you guys failed to report it as you should have. We have a wonderful client named Sue Thayer, and she was a former director of two Planned Parenthood clinics in Iowa. And Sue Thayer is this really neat woman. So she runs Planned Parenthood clinics, but she's also a foster care mom. And she has, I think, foster care like 23 kids.
She
already.
ran Planned Parenthood facilities, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
not anymore. She's just this anomaly. I mean, like she has foster care women,
Yeah,
but she's
yeah.
also going to work at Planned Parenthood. She loves kids, not so much. So which is fair to say, and she would say that. So Sue Thayer is this brave, brave woman who now does not work at Planned Parenthood anymore and speaks out against the atrocities that she's seen happen there. And as Sue Thayer will tell you, and I think girls, you'll find this really specific, really interesting, and any economic majors, financially minded people will find this interesting. I didn't know this, but Planned Parenthood is able to get birth control at a really discounted price through a specific rule that helps them get it at a lower cost. So they're buying birth control for $2.37 a packet, okay? They are charging women, asking for a donation, excuse me, not charging them, they're asking for a donation for that. So already that's a little weird, asking for a donation for this. But they charge the federal government $37 for that packet of birth control. The federal government reimburses them $27 for that packet of birth control. So you can quickly start seeing how profit adds up, okay, at this so-called nonprofit. So seeing how much profit they could make on birth control, Planned Parenthood came up with a program called C-Mail, the letter C. And any woman that had ever come into a Planned Parenthood asking for birth control now can get it delivered right to her door without seeing a doctor, without finding out how you're doing. So continual packets of birth control going out, doesn't matter if you move. If it gets sent back to Planned Parenthood, they reuse it. So they again charge the federal government $37 for that packet of Planned Parenthood or packet of birth control and are reimbursed $27. So you can see how this so-called nonprofit is making so much money, that they have a vested interest in putting profit over people. And that's why they take what we give them, $1.2 million every single day of taxpayer funds, and they turn around and they endorse certain candidates because those candidates go and protect them from being scrutinized. And so we've worked to make sure that America knows there's better options for women, that your tax dollars are going to Planned Parenthood, and that they should be able to function on their own without us being complicit in the act of abortion and the other terrible things that I've just talked about that they're doing. So I'm happy to say that we had a really good group coalition around this effort. We were able to go into each state, create these beautiful maps that showed the number of federally qualified health centers in that area, community health clinics versus Planned Parenthoods. And we've seen legislation passed in states across the country as well as at a federal level. For the first time, Congress has agreed to defund Planned Parenthood. Now it's obviously not supported by the president, so we shall see what happens with the new president. But just again, guys, information is power. That life is beautiful and needs to be protected. And it's we Christians who are starting these crisis pregnancy centers that I would really encourage you guys to get involved in and find out about, that are offering women and families and men empowerment and options and opportunity. Because as I've told you, some would like to make you think that abortion would end the problem. It doesn't. And it's a continual lifetime of dealing with that decision. So we can provide healing for those sorts of the men and women involved in that, but also we can advocate that there's no way we're going to get to provide healing. There's no way that amazing amount of abortions that's happening in Planned Parenthood will slow down if we continue to fund them. So that's something we've been talking about as well. So I'll let Kerri go ahead.
And part of, and you might, what was kind of the tipping point in this fight, so to speak, because Planned Parenthood has been around for a long time. They've been doing the same things for many years, and we've been involved in many lawsuits addressing all kinds of issues. We've been submitting a report to Congress for years detailing waste, abuse, potential fraud. But what changed the game with this was the messaging. It's all about how you say it. And so the reason Alison keeps emphasizing those 13,000 clinics public health clinics is what we said was, it wasn't just stop giving money to Planned Parenthood, because that doesn't resonate. People don't like that. What we said is, let's redirect that money to the 13,000 clinics that outnumber Planned Parenthood 20 to 1 across the country, and fund these public health community centers who are providing comprehensive care for women, who are providing many more services than these Planned Parenthood facilities do. So, and these maps showed the amount, the ratio, and then because of the messaging, because of the maps, and because of just these pure facts and the messaging points, right now, 13 states in the country in the last, I guess, 9 months have defunded Planned Parenthood. That's a big deal.
And
Any questions, Amy?
yeah, I want to take questions. I want to share with you guys just an example of a life legal issue. So when I thought Kerri was going to go towards these videos, you guys have heard about these CMP videos, Center for Medical Progress videos, that caught Planned Parenthood employees doing some really terrible things. That's how the local level impacts. So people, when they see that, when they saw Dr. Kermit Gosnell, who was in Philadelphia where my dad grew up, when they saw that women were dying in Dr. Kermit Gosnell's abortion clinic, they run to their states and they go, we got to do something. So you saw, like in Texas, a bill called HB2 came up. HB2 would have it would have regulated abortion after 20 weeks. Because at 20 weeks, we know babies can feel pain, they have eyelashes, their fingernails, they respond to sight and light, or to noise and to light. So HB2 was a very common sense regulation. And we had to fly down to Texas to hold rallies to encourage the members down there to allow HB2 to continue on because Texas was for it.
And this is when you were at CWA.
Mm-hmm. And I was at CWA, and you guys will, I don't know if you remember the whole Wendy Davis situation. Wendy Davis stood there and filibustered on this. But guys, we're fighting for that. We're fighting for 20 weeks. And I think it's important to point out that we are making a case for life. And we're willing to say, can we just meet at 20 weeks? So these sorts of things, when you have conversations with your family and friends, instead of it being such a broad issue, go ahead and just take it down. So at what level? Is it at 20 weeks that we can say a baby has a right to life? Or where do you draw the line? That's been a good question, at least for me, to kind of have those kind of conversations. So yeah, HB2 went all the way to the Supreme Court, though, even just recently, to be heard about whether that's a reasonable regulation on abortion, and that's that women are still supported, and that's where we step in as Christians.
And actually, when it went to the Supreme Court, the 20-week provision wasn't even part of it. So that's actually in Texas right now. What went to the Supreme Court was whether abortion facilities should follow the same safety and healthcare regulations as similar health clinics that perform similarly invasive physical procedures. And so, obviously, we talked a lot about that. And certainly, a woman who is about to go get surgery of any kind should be having it done in a facility that's safe and clean. And that's really what the case before the Supreme Court boiled down to, so we're still waiting for a decision on that. We're not litigating that, but we filed friend to the court briefs. We represented a lot of pro-life doctors and nurses, and so it'll be interesting to see what will happen with that case.
Mm-hmm. Is there any questions on?
Right, so Roe v. Wade, how many of you have ever read the actual opinion, the decision of Roe v. Wade? Right. Yeah, I heard what you said. Yeah, it's an interesting piece of literature, isn't it? You had justices who decided to, I guess, put on what they perceived to be, I don't even know what to call it. Dean Tamal, do you have any words for it about Roe v. Wade? But anyway, yes, so we are working towards abortion being something that is not part of our culture. Obviously, I think we all agree that every child deserves a life, every child deserves a chance at having a life, every child has potential and deserves to live that potential out. So we are involved in cases that continue that mission. Many.
The sidewalk ones.
Many. So we're representing a bunch in California right now. California is doing this thing where they're basically requiring these crisis pregnancy centers to put up a sign. It's almost like a disclosure sign. Hey guys, we don't actually do abortions here. And when you come in, if you want one, we'll be able to refer you to a place where you can go. It's crazy, right? And so it's a free speech issue, forcing these organizations to put up a sign in such a way that undermines their entire mission. People are going there for a certain service. They're going there because they need hope, they need help. And so we're representing these pregnancy centers. And there are a number across the country. We also had a big Supreme Court case that one of our volunteer attorneys ended up arguing at the Supreme Court a couple of years ago. It's called McCullen v. Coakley, and that basically said that the public sidewalk is the public sidewalk. So if there is someone who wants to stand out there and peacefully give out literature about abortion facility or peacefully talk to someone there, they can do so. The public sidewalk is and this is in the court opinion, I'm paraphrasing, a hallmark of America in that people can stand on a sidewalk and have a conversation, and you can't limit a person's ability to do so just because it's outside an abortion facility. So that was one of our cases.
The guy who actually organized all of the Planned Parenthood videos recently, was totally gone after. I saw they went into his condo and tore it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys representing him, or what's going on there?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're not representing him. We will be. We're not representing him, but we're certainly very supportive of the groups who are, and we obviously have been very thankful for his work in those videos. Because those videos, I said the tipping point with the messaging point that I told you earlier about redirecting the funding. The only reason that was able to be so successful was because it was joined together with those videos. You see a horrible video of a top-level Planned Parenthood exec and doctor laughing and joking about the trafficking and selling of baby body parts. It's horrifying. And then we say, that's really bad. Here's the solution. Let's redirect the money to these public health centers who really need it so women can get the health care that they need.
Mm-hmm. But here's a point on that with David Daleidon's case. When that came out, you have a moment in history where the nation is looking at Planned Parenthood. And so that's what I think is really cool, is when you can agilely adjust and go, okay, we were looking at this, but now we're going to deal with this. And ADF actually did a coal fire report, which says that all of those are authentic. I know that Planned Parenthood did a report that said they're edited, but what they edited out was his bathroom breaks, which I'm thankful that they did. So just know that that's authentic, unfortunately, what's on those tapes. So
and the coal fire is an internationally respected, renowned forensics analysis firm. So they did a report. They said, nope, it's all good. Bathroom breaks, conversations in the hallway,
food,
the guy driving. I've said, because I've attended a lot of these Planned Parenthood hearings on the Hill, I say just show it then. Let's just show it. You know, if everyone wants to sit down, if these members of Congress and the people here and the reporters want to sit, let's sit. Let's sit for 26 hours and let's watch it all so everyone can see. No one's taken me up on that yet, but
and they'll admit
I'll continue to push it.
Yeah. Yeah, when you have people at those hearings saying, I've not watched any of the videos, and the hearing is about the videos.
Can you imagine?
That's hard.
As an attorney, it really bothers me sitting there. I can't even get past that point, to be honest with you, when it's a hearing about the videos and you have members of Congress who say, no, I haven't watched them. And then when they play the video or clips, they won't look. They look the other way. I've been there. I've watched it. I can't even imagine going into a courtroom and saying to a judge, yeah, I haven't looked at any of the evidence. Nope, I haven't looked at the briefs. I haven't read the documents, but here I am, ready to talk about it and fight for why this should be the case. It's mind-boggling and clearly disturbing. And what does that say to you all?
Any other questions real quick before we get to the next part?
You said the public health centers gave more services than Planned Parenthood. I know that Planned Parenthood doesn't offer post-abortion counseling, but for the doctors, what's some other services that they provide that Planned Parenthood doesn't?
Great question.
Sure.
So,
Primary care.
Yeah, primary care is one. A lot of pediatric primary care as well. And then one huge one is mammograms. So Planned Parenthood has said that they do mammograms. President Obama has said that they do mammograms. Celebrities have said that Planned Parenthood does mammograms. This is what's so cool. This is what I get to brag on ADF. I feel new. I've been there like a year, but I get to brag sometimes. ADF filed a FOIA to find out if any single Planned Parenthood had a license to perform mammograms. How many? 0. If any Planned Parenthood is doing mammograms, they're breaking the law. So for it to be repeated like that is something that we have to push back on. That's not happening there. They refer out for that. We have wonderful allies and friends who have called and said, can I come in? And they're like, sure, you can come in and then I'll tell you where you can go. It's like, why would I do that? So that's one of them. Do you want to touch on some other things? We have this awesome document. Maybe I'll share it with the group, but it shows all the different services provided that these community health centers are doing. As you continue on, and also just as we're wrapping up our time, Kerri's going to wrap up here, but please reach out to us. We just love Liberty, which I think you guys know by now, and we want to help you. It's why we came down here. We're really proud of you guys and impressed by the stuff that Liberty's doing right now. Just hearing about your new clubs, these 2 clubs are really great, so thank you to Nick, Alyssa, and Candace for having us. So we'll let Kerri wrap it up.
A couple of things, and if you're interested, you can always check out our website. We do a lot of university free speech work, but we also do a lot of work protecting Christian clubs and their ability to continue to be Christian clubs. And that's a big thing we're seeing right now pop up on the scene. Will Christian clubs, or not just Christian, by the way, any religious club, that's really the issue. Will they be allowed to continue to pick leaders who believe in the faith of that club? Now, this sounds so elementary. Certainly, if you have a Jewish club, those members should be able to pick a Jewish leader, right? If you have a Christian club, same deal, Islam, the whole 9 yards. But we're seeing that actually big time under attack right now. And so that's another area that we're involved in. We're also involved in just some classic free speech things. And we're also involved in a number of cases at the Supreme Court. I've been at ADF for about almost 2.5 years. We've been at the Supreme Court almost every term, which has been very exciting. I never thought in a million years that I would be able to be part of a team that's at the Supreme Court, and be advocating in a different way, but be part of that whole team. And we have a case that we're arguing in October that involves a Missouri church that runs a daycare, and that daycare had applied to a state grant program, and that grant program gives recycled tire scraps to schools that apply for them. Why recycled tire scraps? Apparently those make playgrounds more safe versus gravel. Well, the school applied, and they were rejected simply for being a religious school. We lost all along the way in that case. So to answer your question earlier, it doesn't necessarily determine anything because the Supreme Court has decided to take it up. So we'll be arguing that case in October. And obviously the takeaway principle from that in the Constitution, First Amendment case law is pretty clear. You can't treat religious individuals as second-class citizens. So be on the lookout for that. It's called Trinity Lutheran. But I just want to wrap up quickly, and I just want to say what liberty means to me. I mentioned earlier that I had left the law school and took a 4-year break, and that was because I had some very upsetting things happen in the beginning of my 2L year. And I was devastated. And I told you earlier how I knew that I was supposed to go to Liberty, and I felt called to go here. And I knew that I knew. It was one of those few things in my life that I could say, this is the right path for me. So you can imagine when things fell apart, how devastating that was. And a number of years later, and in fact I said, I'm never going to be a lawyer. I'm never going to go back to that again. I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I signed up for. So several years later, I was thinking about it vaguely. I was deciding, I think I was going to make a career shift, not exactly sure what I was going to do. So I decided to give Liberty University School of Law a call. It was 4 years later. And I called Mrs. Tamala, who's sitting right over there, actually. She was the Dean of Admissions at the time. And I just said, hey, Mrs. Tamala, how have you been? It's been years. And so, she said, Kerri, and I didn't realize this. It was July. If you don't come back next month, you'll lose your first year of law school because you have to start and complete your law degree in 7 years. And I was right at that mark. I didn't even realize it. I don't even know if I knew that rule. And she said to me, why don't you think about coming back? And I thought, I don't know. I don't know that I want to do this. And so I thought, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I really felt like God called me to do this years ago, but things changed, and I'm not sure. So I said, you know what? I'm going to drive down to Lynchburg and just see. So I took a couple days off from work, and I drove down, and I met with Dean Tamala, Mrs. Tamala's husband, who's sitting next to him. And we talked for a long time. And I left his office and I thought, I think I'm going to go back. And so I'm getting a little emotional, especially because I have two people in the audience that are responsible for me right now being in a position that is truly the biggest honor and privilege and best experience of my entire life. To be able to advocate for people, to live out their faith, to come alongside our beautiful clients and do what I get to do is the biggest gift that God has ever given to me. But I can tell you it did not look like that years ago when I thought it was all completely over. And so Liberty means a lot to me. Liberty was the only law school that I applied to, and I'm so glad that I made this choice. And one more thing I wanted to add is that when I did leave the law school, it was very, very difficult for me. It was a very difficult, dark period for me for a lot of reasons in regards to what had happened. And the law school professor named Roger Byrne was incredible. He reached out to me month after month after month for 2 years. Kerri, I think this is what God has planned for you, but it was deeper than that. God cares about you. God loves you. Let's talk about things. And he refused to give up on me and my relationship with the Lord and what my calling was. And I'm also so grateful for him. Where else in the world can you go to a school where professors do things like that, who literally save your career, and in some ways, they save your life? And that's what happened for me. So it's been such a privilege and honor talking to you all today. I'm also happy that you can kind of see the end result of what I get to do now. It was a tough path, a path I did not anticipate or plan, but one that God worked together for good in a way that I could never anticipate or imagine. So I say that as an encouragement to you wherever you are in your lives, as you think about your career and your life. Just be encouraged. You never know what's ahead.
Thank you, guys. And if you want to be a part of the raffle for the gift cards, I'm going to ask you to sign up with Candace on the way out, because I know we got like 20 people, but I wanted to be fair. I feel like I'm sitting next to a lawyer, so I should be fair in front of a bunch of them. That you guys you all get a chance to be a part of the raffle, and we just want to thank you for coming. So the dinner and those gift cards are a blessing from ADF to thank you guys for being the next generation of freedom fighters. So thank you.
And feel free to ask us questions.
Yeah.